Everything he left behind. A story of betrayal, power, and the woman he never saw coming. Featuring Bethany Gordon and Finlay Blackburn. She came home to the smell of fresh coffee she hadn't made. Bethany Gordon stood motionless in the entrance of her own kitchen, her rolling carry-on still behind her, her house keys pressed into her palm. She had just flown back from a 3-day contract trip to Portland, signed a $20 million deal before lunch on the last day, and all she wanted was a hot shower and 12 hours of silence. Instead, she found an envelope. Cream-colored. Thick paper. Expensive. The kind of stationery that people buy when they want the ending to feel dignified. Her name was written across the front in Rowan's precise, architectural handwriting. Not my love. Not Bethany, sweetheart. Not even B. The way he used to sign the sticky notes he left on the fridge when they were young and still believed in each other. Just Bethany Gordon. Like she was a vendor. A business contact. A problem to be formally addressed. Her hands didn't shake when she picked it up. That surprised her. She unfolded the letter slowly, reading every word once, then again. The kitchen was quiet. The coffee had gone cold. Outside, a car passed on the street, and the sound of it disappearing felt like a metaphor she didn't need explained. 12 years. 12 years of marriage, of building a home, of becoming invisible inside her own life. All of it reduced to a single page of expensive paper and clean, deliberate sentences. She placed the letter back on the counter and stood very still. Then she picked up her phone and made a call. The man who wrote that letter had no idea what was about to happen to him. He thought he was discarding her. He had no idea he had just lit the fuse. Chapter 1. The letter was written in Rowan Calloway's careful hand, and it said everything a man says when he has already made up his mind and only wants the paperwork to follow. Bethany Gordon read it standing at the kitchen counter, her coat still on, her suitcase still behind her like a witness. Bethany, by the time you read this, you'll understand that our marriage is over. I've spent years trying to make this work, but I've finally found something real. Serena sees me in ways you never have. She supports my ambitions. She makes me feel alive in ways that haven't existed between us for a long time. I need you to collect your personal belongings and be gone before I return tomorrow evening. Serena will be moving in, and we're beginning our life together. The house, everything we've built, it belongs to me now. You can stay with your sister or find an apartment. My attorney will be in touch next week regarding the divorce papers. Please make this easy for both of us and be gone before I return. There is nothing left to discuss. Rowan. She read it a second time, then a third. Her chest was tight, but her mind was strangely, almost terrifyingly clear. 12 years. 12 years of managing his social calendar, cooking the meals he preferred, sitting quietly at dinner parties where she was introduced as Rowan's wife, rather than as a person with her own name and her own life. 12 years of slowly disappearing while he expanded. 12 years of tolerating the way he called her consulting business her little side project, with that particular brand of condescension that masqueraded as affection. She walked through the house. The living room with the pale gray sofa she had chosen, while he claimed credit for their tasteful aesthetic whenever guests complimented it. The dining room where she had hosted 47 dinners for his colleagues and their wives while he barely acknowledged she had cooked them. The master bedroom with the king bed where he had become increasingly cold and unreachable over the last 2 years. 2 years. She stood in the doorway of his walk-in closet. Half of it was empty. He had been removing things gradually, slowly enough that she wouldn't notice. How many evenings had he told her he was at the office while he was with Serena? How many times had she believed him because she loved him, or because she had wanted to believe the marriage was still salvageable? She sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the letter again. The house, everything we've built, it belongs to me now. She almost laughed. She almost did. He had absolutely no idea. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number saved in her contacts under the name Florist. It rang twice before a woman's voice answered. Crisp, professional, composed. Bethany. I've been expecting you to call. Sylvia, pull the files. All of them. It's time. A pause. Are you certain? Bethany looked around the bedroom one last time. At the photographs on the dresser showing a smiling couple who no longer existed. At the life she had sustained through sheer effort and quiet determination. At the version of herself she had made smaller, year by year, to fit inside his idea of what a wife should be. I've never been more certain of anything. How fast do you need me to move? As fast as you can. She hung up and walked down the hall to the guest room. The room Rowan dismissed as her office corner. This was where her real life lived. Her laptop. Her files. Her business records. Her documentation. 8 years of careful, deliberate work that Rowan had categorized as a hobby. She began to pack. Not to leave. To prepare. Her phone buzzed. A message from her sister Delia. How was Portland? Did they sign? Bethany typed back. They signed. 20 million. Also, I'm getting divorced. 3 dots appeared immediately, then vanished, then reappeared. Finally, what? Calling you right now. Don't freak out, Bethany said when she answered. Don't freak out? Don't freak. What happened? Bethany told her about the note. She kept her voice steady. She described coming home to cream-colored paper and the formal dissolution of 12 years of marriage. When she finished, Delia was silent for a long moment. Then, I never liked him. You know I never liked him. But I'm so sorry, honey. I'm genuinely sorry he did this to you. Don't be sorry yet. Be ready. This is about to get very interesting. What do you mean? Rowan thinks he's discarding me. He thinks I'm going to quietly disappear. He has absolutely no idea about Meridian Group. He has no idea about this house. He has no idea who he just tried to throw away. Delia's voice shifted. Oh no. That man just made the most expensive mistake of his life. They talked for another hour while Bethany continued organizing documents. By the time she hung up, night had fallen outside the windows. She ordered dinner from her favorite Italian place and ate at the kitchen table with her laptop open. Her company, Meridian Group, had started as a genuine passion project 8 years ago. She had always been gifted with technology, with data architecture, with the kind of systems thinking that could transform a struggling company's infrastructure. When Rowan's subtle, persistent dismissiveness had started making her feel worthless at home, she had thrown herself into freelance consulting work. Small projects at first, then larger ones, then transformational ones. She had incorporated 6 years ago, kept the business entirely separate from their marital assets, built it methodically, carefully, brilliantly, into one of the most respected technology consulting firms in the Northeast. Rowan knew she did some computer work. He had no idea she employed 51 people. He had no idea she had clients across 4 continents. He had no idea her personal net worth was approaching $55 million. As for the house, the beautiful 4-bedroom property in one of the best neighborhoods in the city, the house Rowan loved to show off to his colleagues. It had been purchased through her family trust, left to her by her grandmother when Bethany was 28. Rowan's name had never appeared on the deed. He had never thought to check. He simply assumed, because he made the utility payments and handled the occasional repair, that the house was his. Or theirs. Or both. There was no mortgage. Bethany owned it outright. And according to the legal agreements she had signed when they married, property owned before marriage or acquired through family inheritance remained entirely separate property. Rowan had just attempted to evict her from her own house. Bethany finished her dinner, washed her plate, and sat back down at the table. She opened a new document and began making lists. Calls to make. Documents to gather. Meetings to schedule. At midnight, her phone lit up. An unknown number. Bethany, this is Serena. Rowan told me about the divorce. I want you to know I never meant to hurt you. He told me you two were already finished emotionally. I hope we can handle this like adults. Bethany stared at the message for a long moment. Then she blocked the number without replying. She had nothing to say to that woman. Nothing at all. She went to bed in the guest room and fell asleep faster than she had in years. The The real story was just beginning. Chapter 2. Bethany woke at 6, as she always did. For exactly 3 seconds, she forgot. Then she remembered, and instead of grief, she felt something else entirely. A cold, clarifying sense of purpose, like a surgical tool being removed from its case. She made coffee and opened her laptop at the kitchen table. Her calendar was full. A video call with her Vienna team at 7. A development review at 9. A lunch meeting with a potential strategic investor at noon. Her life was rich and purposeful and real. Rowan simply hadn't been paying enough attention to notice. At 7 sharp, she connected to the call. Her team in Vienna, 4 brilliant analysts and 2 senior architects, greeted her with their usual efficiency. They reviewed a data security overhaul for a major insurance conglomerate, adjusted timelines, and approved a budget expansion. Bethany signed off feeling sharp and alive. This was hers. She had built this. At 8, Sylvia Hartwell called. Sylvia was the finest divorce attorney in the state, possibly in the region, and Bethany had quietly retained her 7 months ago when Rowan's emotional withdrawal had begun to look less like stress and more like a man already leaving. She had hoped, in the way you hope for things you suspect are already gone, that she would never need to make this call. Good morning, Bethany. I've reviewed everything you sent last night. This is even cleaner than I anticipated. Define clean. Your financial separation is immaculate. Meridian Group is completely protected. Your own capital, your own structure, pre-marriage establishment clearly documented. The property is entirely in your name. And I ran some preliminary research on Rowan last evening. A pause. He's carrying significant debt. Bethany set down her coffee. What kind of debt? 3 credit cards near their limits. A personal loan from a private lender with an aggressive interest rate. His income barely services the payments. He appears to have been spending considerably beyond his means. Serena. That's my assumption as well. There's more. I have a colleague, Renata Cole, Private Investigations, who owes me a professional favor. Would you like her to take a look at Rowan's recent activities? Yes. There's also the matter of his instruction for you to vacate the property. We can use that. It establishes abandonment intent. Combined with adultery, you have grounds for a fault-based filing. In this jurisdiction, that means he walks away with nothing. Bethany sat with that for a moment. 12 years of marriage. Of bending herself to fit inside his expectations. Of absorbing his quiet, consistent message that she was never quite enough. Never quite as smart or interesting or attractive as she ought to be. Full package, Sylvia. Divorce, asset protection, everything. And I want to know exactly who my husband has been while I was building a company. Consider it done. Papers will be filed today. He'll be served this week. Are you safe in the house? I'm not leaving. Good. It's yours. He has no legal right to ask you to leave. In fact, as sole property owner, you could pursue an eviction. Something settled into Bethany's mind like a key turning in a lock. File the eviction papers, too. Gladly. After the call, Bethany spent an hour reviewing Meridian Group's financials. 3 major contracts in active progress. 2 more in final negotiation. Her revenue projections for the year were running 15% ahead of forecast. Her team was extraordinary. She had built something remarkable. At 9, the development team joined the call. Adrian, her lead developer, Cassie, who managed client relationships, Theo, operations, and Fiona, cybersecurity. None of them knew their CEO was in the middle of a divorce. They knew her as the sharp, focused woman who had recruited each of them personally and paid them significantly above market rate. They discussed deployment timelines, reviewed a client migration, and celebrated Cassie closing a new contract with a financial services firm. When the meeting ended, Cassie stayed on the line. Boss, you okay? You seem different today. Bethany considered being polished and professional about it, then decided against it. I'm getting divorced. Found out yesterday. Cassie's expression on screen shifted from concern to something much fiercer. That man. I met him once. The company dinner, remember? He introduced himself as your husband and then spent 20 minutes talking about his own work without asking a single one of us what we did. That sounds exactly right. You're going to be fine, Bethany. Better than fine. You're already thriving. He just never had the intelligence to see it. After Cassie logged off, Bethany sat with those words. She was already thriving. Gerald's, Rowan's, letter hadn't destroyed her. It had just confirmed what had been true for years. She had quietly outgrown him. The question was simply whether she'd had the courage to admit it. Her phone rang. An unknown number. Ms. Gordon, my name is Renata Cole. Sylvia Hartwell asked me to look into your husband's recent activities. Do you have a few minutes? I do. I'll keep this preliminary. Full report to follow, but here's what I have from the last 5 hours. Rowan Calloway has been involved with a woman named Serena Voss for approximately 20 months. They've taken 4 trips together, Edinburgh, Lisbon, and twice to Miami, all charged to credit cards in his name. The spending is substantial. Hotels, restaurants, jewelry. Is there more? Serena Voss is currently married. Her husband, a corporate attorney named Frederick Voss, travels extensively for work. That appears to be how the arrangement has sustained itself. There's a separate financial matter I'm still verifying. I'd prefer another 24 hours before I share the specifics. What category is it? Renata paused. Professional. Let me confirm the details. You'll have a full file by Friday. After the call ended, Bethany sat very still. Rowan was having an affair with a married woman. Rowan was drowning in personal debt. Rowan had written her a letter demanding she leave her own home. The sheer audacity of it almost made her laugh. Her lunch meeting was with a venture capitalist named Howard Chun, who had been circling Meridian Group for months with acquisition interest. They met at a restaurant downtown, ordered salmon, and negotiated across the table like 2 people who genuinely respected each other's intelligence. Howard wanted to invest $18 million for an 18% stake. Bethany countered with $12 million for 10%. By the time dessert arrived, they had agreed to $12.5 for 10. Your growth trajectory is genuinely unusual, Howard said. Most consultancies plateau. You keep accelerating. I hire exceptional people, and I listen to them without ego. Your husband must be proud. Bethany smiled carefully. He's never quite understood what I do. She said it simply, without heat, and Howard nodded the way perceptive people nod when they catch a glimpse of something painful and choose not to probe. She drove home that afternoon feeling like a woman who had already won a war her opponent hadn't realized had started. Chapter 3. By Friday, Renata Cole's full report arrived as a PDF encrypted with a password Sylvia texted separately. Bethany opened it at her kitchen table with a glass of water and a neutrality she had been carefully cultivating. The document was 43 pages. She read it all. Rowan had not simply been having an affair. Over the past 20 months, he had also been systematically diverting funds from client retainer accounts at his financial management firm, Bracken and Cole Capital, where he worked as a senior portfolio strategist. The amounts were not small. The total, according to Renata's preliminary figures, was close to $180,000, redirected through a series of vendor invoices for services that had never been rendered. He had been stealing from his clients to finance a lifestyle designed to impress a woman who was stealing from her own employer. Bethany set the report down and stared at the wall for a long moment. She had spent 12 years married to a man she genuinely hadn't known. She had suspected unhappiness. She had suspected distance. She had even, in her most painful private moments, suspected infidelity. But she had not suspected this. She had not suspected that beneath the tailored suits and the confident presentations at dinner parties, beneath the man who criticized her ambitions and called her business a hobby, there was a person capable of genuine criminal fraud. She called Sylvia. I've read the report. I thought you might want to talk through it. He stole $180,000 from his clients. Renata's estimate. The actual figure may be higher. We'll know more once the auditors get involved, which, I want to prepare you, is likely coming very soon. These things have a way of unraveling once they start. What happens to the divorce case? It becomes dramatically simpler. Fault-based divorce on grounds of adultery and financial misconduct. He has no viable counterclaim. The house is yours. Meridian Group is untouchable. He walks away with his personal possessions and the debt he accumulated. Possibly less, if civil liability attaches. Bethany looked out the window at the garden she had planted herself, the roses she tended every spring. File everything. Already in motion. Papers served this morning. He's been formally notified. That evening, she received an email from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line, "Please understand." She opened it, more out of exhausted curiosity than anything else. Bethany, I know you hate me, and I understand why. I'm not trying to excuse what I did. I just want you to know that I was deceived, too. Rowan told me you were emotionally finished with each other years ago. He told me you didn't want the marriage anymore. He painted you as cold and unavailable. I believed him because it was easier than asking questions. I know that's not good enough. I know I should have known better. I'm writing this because I've been told some things about Rowan's situation that have frightened me, and I realize now that neither of us knew who he really was. I hope you can understand, even if you can't forgive. Serena. Bethany read it twice. The manipulation was actually impressive in its construction. Serena was trying to position herself as a fellow victim, as a woman deceived rather than a woman who had willingly participated in destroying a marriage. She was reaching for solidarity, for absolution. Bethany deleted the email without responding. Some lines, once crossed, did not benefit from being discussed. She closed her laptop and went to bed feeling the full weight of everything she now knew. Rowan wasn't just unfaithful. He was a criminal. Serena wasn't just a mistress. She was apparently entangled in her own financial misconduct. And somewhere beneath the exhaustion and the grief, there was a growing, unmistakable feeling that she could not quite name. Freedom. She had spent 12 years trying to be enough for someone who had never intended to value her. Now she knew why. Rowan's failure had never been about her. It had been about who he was. His limitations. His choices. His character. She fell asleep thinking about a foundation she had been quietly imagining for years. A place where women could go after the wreckage. After the letter on the kitchen counter. After the life they'd built turned out to have been built on sand. She had the resources. She had the motivation. She had the story. Tomorrow, she would start building. Hey lovers and billionaires. I'd love to know where in the world you are watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how global this love really is. Please take a few seconds to like the video and drop a comment, and if you're not a part of the family yet, please subscribe to encourage us and help the channel grow. Chapter 4. Delia arrived at 10 in the morning carrying 2 coffees and a look on her face that said she was prepared to be arrested if necessary. If that man shows his face, she said, settling onto the kitchen stool, I want to be standing right here. They didn't wait long. At 11:15, a moving truck pulled up outside. Rowan stepped out of his car behind it. Charcoal trousers, white shirt, expression arranged somewhere between irritation and authority. He walked to the front door and rang the bell, then rang it again. Bethany opened the door to the length of the security chain. Rowan, open the door. I need to get my things. You have 90 minutes. Your belongings are your clothing, your personal electronics, your golf equipment, and any items you can demonstrate sole ownership of. Everything else stays. His jaw tightened. Everything in this house is mine. Nothing in this house is yours. The property has been in my name since before we married. The furniture was purchased with my money. Your lawyer will confirm this as soon as he reads the documentation Sylvia filed this morning. I lived here for 12 years. You told me to be gone before you returned. I'm returning the courtesy. He went red, a particular shade of red she recognized, the one that preceded his most controlled form of anger, the kind that expressed itself through clipped sentences and deliberate condescension. Then a woman appeared behind him on the path. Serena Voss was tall, well-dressed, her expression a careful composition of calm. She looked at Bethany with something between curiosity and assessment. "You must be Bethany. I think we should all sit down and have an adult conversation about this." Bethany looked at her directly. "You're not welcome on my property. Please step back to the public pavement." "Our property," Rowan said. "She has every right to be here." Delia appeared at Bethany's shoulder. "She doesn't. This is private property, and there's currently a restraining order in place. Rowan, take what belongs to you and leave before I call the police." Rowan's jaw worked silently for a moment. "Bethany, you're being completely unreasonable. We built this life together." "No, I built this life. You lived in it and criticized the construction." She closed the door. For the next 90 minutes, she watched through the security camera feed as the movers carried out Rowan's belongings, his clothing, his equipment, his personal items. When he attempted to direct them toward furniture and artwork, they declined, producing the inventory documentation Sylvia had prepared, a full itemized record of every significant item in the house with purchase dates and payment source. At the 1-hour mark, Serena's phone rang. Bethany watched her answer, watched her composed expression crack, and then collapse. The woman pulled sharply away from Rowan, speaking rapidly, her free hand moving in short, agitated gestures. Then she walked to her car without looking back and drove away. Rowan stared after her, confused. He tried calling her twice. She didn't answer. He stood in the driveway for a long moment, looking at the house, then got in his car and left. Bethany's phone rang immediately. "Renata, did you see the blonde woman leave in a hurry?" "I watched the whole thing." Her husband found out about the affair. He hired an investigator 2 weeks ago after a colleague of his spotted her with Rowan at a restaurant. Everything was confirmed this morning. Frederick Voss called her 20 minutes ago. He's filing for divorce, and he intends to make it thorough and expensive. He's also a senior partner at a litigation firm. That's why she left. Yes. And it continues. Frederick Voss is a methodical man. He's apparently been investigating the financial issues at Serena's firm as well. His attorneys have already been in contact with her employer. After the call, Bethany walked through her house. It felt different now. Lighter. More genuinely hers than it had in years. She and Delia spent the afternoon rearranging rooms, reclaiming spaces that had been unconsciously organized around Rowan's preferences, his comfort, his aesthetic. That evening, an email arrived from the legal department at Bracken and Cole Capital. They had identified irregularities in several client accounts and had placed Rowan on administrative leave pending an urgent internal audit. The structure was beginning to fall. Chapter 5. Sylvia called Monday morning before Bethany had finished her first coffee. "Rowan's attorney has filed a countermotion. He's claiming you concealed assets during the marriage and that he's entitled to a portion of Meridian Group." Bethany set her mug down carefully. "He's claiming what?" "It's baseless. We have complete documentation showing that Meridian Group was established with your own capital prior to any commingling of marital finances and maintained as a separate legal entity throughout. The house documentation is equally clean. But he's fighting, which means we have a hearing in 10 days. Let him fight. There's more. He's also petitioned the court to allow him access to the property to retrieve additional items. We've already responded. The deadline has passed, and the inventory has been filed. But expect him to push. He can push as hard as he likes." 3 days later, Sylvia's office called with an update that changed the nature of everything. The internal audit at Bracken and Cole Capital had concluded. They had found the full scope of the diversions. The amount was higher than Renata's preliminary estimate, $212,000. Charges were being referred to the prosecutor's office. Criminal charges. The same week, Sylvia received a call from an assistant district attorney named Monica Tremblay, who was building the case against Rowan and wanted to speak with Bethany as a witness to his lifestyle spending. "You're not required to participate," Sylvia told her. "But your testimony would be valuable. I'll meet with her." The meeting took place in a glass-walled conference room at the prosecutor's office. Monica Tremblay was a woman in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and the particular kind of calm that comes from spending a career in rooms where people lie to her. Mrs. Calloway, or do you prefer Gordon? Gordon. Ms. Gordon. Thank you for coming in. I know this is a difficult period. I'm fine. What do you need? Monica opened a folder. Your husband spent approximately $200,000 on his relationship with Serena Voss over a 20-month period. Hotels, travel, gifts. Did you observe any of this spending? We kept our finances entirely separate. I had no access to his accounts. Did you notice behavioral changes? New clothing, unexplained absences. Bethany thought carefully. He started claiming more late evenings at the office. New cologne. He began taking his calls in another room. I attributed it to work stress. Did he ever request money from you? Once. About 14 months ago. He said he had unexpected car repair costs and his account was temporarily low. I transferred him £2,000. He was working with European clients at the time. He never repaid it. Monica made notes. Did you know about the affair before receiving the letter? I knew something was wrong for approximately the last 18 months of the marriage. The emotional distance. The way he stopped seeing me as a person and started treating me like an inconvenience. But I had no specific knowledge until the letter. The letter in which he instructed you to vacate a property that was legally yours. Yes. Monica looked up with something that wasn't quite a smile. I've reviewed the property documentation. That must have been a clarifying moment. It was. Bethany paused. I spent 12 years trying to meet a standard. He kept moving. The note clarified that the standard was never the point. She provided dates, observations, and detailed context for another 40 minutes. When Monica walked her to the lift, she said, "For what it's worth, he made a profound mistake in underestimating you." He made several. Back at her home office, Bethany threw herself into Meridian Group's largest active contract, a comprehensive cybersecurity infrastructure overhaul for a major pharmaceutical company based in Boston, worth $38 million over 3 years. The work was technically absorbing and her team was brilliant, and the hours between 9 and 7 were clean and purposeful and real. But at night, alone in her house, the weight of everything caught up with her. She started working with a psychologist, Dr. Imogen Walsh, who specialized in high-functioning individuals navigating major life transitions. Their first session happened over video on a Tuesday evening, Bethany in her home office with a glass of herbal tea. "Tell me about the note," Dr. Walsh said. "I came home from a work trip. There was a letter on the kitchen counter from my husband. It told me to pack my things and leave before he returned with his new partner. How did that make you feel? Angry? Relieved? Confused? Like I had been living alongside someone I never fully knew? Do you feel responsible for his choices? Sometimes. I think. If I had been different, more attentive, more present." Bethany. Dr. Walsh's voice was calm and direct. "His affair had nothing to do with your adequacy. It reflected his character, his choices, his limitations. You could have been extraordinary by any measure, and he still would have made the same decisions. Because it was never about you." Over the following weeks, those sessions became essential. Dr. Walsh helped her see the pattern clearly, how Rowan's constant low-level criticism had been a projection of his own inadequacy, how his need to diminish her ambitions had been fear, not insight, how she had built a $55 million company while being told, repeatedly and kindly, that her work didn't really matter. "Do you understand," Dr. Walsh said in their fourth session, "how much internal strength that required?" Bethany sat with that question for a long time afterward. She was beginning to understand. Chapter 6. The doorbell rang on a Thursday morning while Bethany was on a client call. She signaled to her assistant through the glass panel that she would handle it, ended the call 2 minutes early, and opened her front door to find 2 police officers standing on her step. "Good morning, Miss Gordon. We're looking for Rowan Calloway. He hasn't lived here since last month. We're currently divorcing. Do you have a current address for him?" His work address. I don't know where he's been living since he vacated. She gave them the Bracken and Cole Capital address and his mobile number. They thanked her and left. Within 2 hours, the news broke. Senior portfolio strategist arrested on fraud charges. The story named Rowan Calloway, aged 41, formerly of Bracken and Cole Capital, charged with 11 counts of client fund misappropriation. The total alleged, $212,000 redirected over a period of 22 months. The story mentioned an ongoing divorce, but did not yet connect Bethany to Meridian Group. She wanted to keep it that way. Her phone began receiving messages from people she hadn't heard from in years. Rowan's colleagues, mutual acquaintances from dinner parties and charity events, and the social machinery of their shared life. They wanted to know if she was all right, if she needed anything, if she had known. She responded to 2 people, Delia and her closest friend from university, a woman named Portia who had been quietly suspicious of Rowan for years and had the grace not to say, "I told you" in her message, only, "I'm here. Whatever you need. Always." The rest received silence. That evening, Rowan called from a restricted number. She answered without thinking, the number looking official enough that she assumed it was her lawyer. "Bethany, please. I need help with bail. I can pay you back, I swear. I just need. Please, I'm asking you as my wife. You wrote a letter instructing me to leave your home by the time you returned. I'm not your wife. I'm your soon-to-be former wife. I made mistakes. I know that. But I'm still. You can't just leave me here. Rowan, you left this marriage. You chose Serena. You chose to steal from your clients. You chose every single one of the decisions that led you to where you are tonight. I didn't make any of those choices. I'll lose everything. You already lost everything. The only difference between yesterday and today is that now you know it." She hung up, blocked the number. Delia came over with wine and Lebanese food, and they sat on the back patio under a clear sky, talking until late. "How do you actually feel?" Delia asked. "Honestly, free and sad, both at the same time. He deserves everything that's happening to him." "Yes, but 12 years, Delia. 12 years of my life with someone who was lying the entire time. Not about small things. About who he was. Maybe not the entire time. Maybe at the beginning he was genuine. People change. He changed, and instead of being honest about it, he chose theft and deception. That's not your failure. That's his character." Bethany poured more wine. "Serena sent me 2 messages. The second one tried to convince me she was also a victim. That Rowan had deceived her too. Were they together when he was stealing? The timelines overlap completely. Then she's not a victim. She's a participant." Delia paused. "What happened to her?" "Frederick Voss is apparently a very thorough man. He's filed for divorce, and his lawyers have been in contact with her employer about the financial irregularities. She's facing her own charges. Her firm placed her on administrative leave last week." Delia was quiet for a moment. "Actions have consequences." "They do." Bethany looked up at the sky. "I keep coming back to the note. How certain he was. How completely confident he was that he could tell me to be gone from my own house, and I would just comply. Pack a bag and disappear. He saw 12 years of marriage and saw someone he could discard. And instead," Bethany smiled, "instead, he inadvertently gave me the only thing I'd been missing. Permission to stop trying to save something that had been dead for years." She went to bed that night with something shifting inside her, the anger beginning to recede, leaving behind something cleaner, more like clarity than bitterness. She had wasted 12 years on a man who didn't deserve her. She would not waste another day. Tomorrow, she would call the architects she had been quietly researching. The building she had found in the city center, the one with high ceilings and natural light and enough space for everything she wanted to create. It was time to build something that mattered. Chapter 7. The arrest made the regional news. The financial press picked it up by the afternoon. By evening, the story had enough detail that a journalist at a business publication made the connection between the estranged wife of Rowan Calloway and the founder of Meridian Group. Bethany's phone began receiving interview requests. She declined all of them. She wasn't ready to tell this story publicly. Not yet. But privately, she was building something, and every day that passed made the structure more solid. She had found the building 3 months earlier, long before she'd ever held a cream-colored envelope in her kitchen. A former commercial space in a central neighborhood, high ceilings, good natural light, easy transport links, enough square footage for offices, meeting rooms, a counseling suite, and a training facility. She had been quietly watching it, letting the idea grow in her mind without pushing it into the open. Now she pulled it into the light. She called the letting agent on a Tuesday morning. She called an architect by noon. She met with her accountant in the afternoon to establish the legal structure, a nonprofit foundation, fully separate from Meridian Group, funded by a personal endowment she had been setting aside for precisely this kind of purpose. The foundation would be called Compass House. The concept was simple and comprehensive, a place where women navigating divorce could access legal guidance, therapy, job retraining, and financial literacy education, all under one roof, all coordinated so that a woman arriving with nothing but a letter on a kitchen counter would leave with a plan, a support network, and the knowledge that rebuilding was not only possible but achievable. The model she had wanted when she had stood in her own kitchen holding that note. The model that hadn't existed. She hired an architect. She hired a director of programs. She began interviewing solicitors willing to contribute pro bono hours. She contacted the therapy practice that had been recommended by Dr. Walsh. She designed the intake process, the support framework, the follow-up protocols. Meanwhile, Meridian Group continued to thrive. The Boston pharmaceutical contract entered its implementation phase. 2 new proposals went out, one to a French logistics company, one to a German financial services group. Revenue projections for the year crossed her most optimistic forecast. One evening in late October, her phone rang. A number she didn't recognize, but the area code was local. "Ms. Gordon? My name is Finlay Blackburn. I'm a venture capital partner at Stonefield Advisors. I've been following Meridian Group's performance for about 18 months, and I'd been planning to reach out through a formal introduction. But then I read about your foundation, Compass House. Your architect's permit application was in the public record, and I wanted to call directly. What you're building is remarkable on both fronts. Thank you. Are you calling about Meridian Group or Compass House?" "Honestly, both." A pause. She noticed his voice, measured, intelligent, with a quality she found herself paying attention to without entirely meaning to. "I'm the lead investor in a foundation similar to what you're describing. We've been operational in Edinburgh for 2 years. I've been wondering whether there was an opportunity for collaboration or shared learning. I'd be interested in having that conversation. Would you be available for coffee? No agenda. Just 2 people who are building similar things, comparing notes." She hesitated for half a second. "Next Wednesday. I'll send you the address." She hung up and sat for a moment, aware of a mild, unexpected warmth in her chest that she chose not to examine too closely. There was too much to build. She didn't have time for distractions. But she found herself thinking about his voice again at 2 in the morning, when she should have been reviewing the Compass House financial projections. She pushed the thought aside and went back to work. Chapter 8. He arrived at the coffee meeting early. She noticed that immediately. It was the kind of detail you file away without meaning to. He was already seated when she arrived, and he stood when he saw her, and he didn't check his phone while he waited for her to settle, which in her experience was rarer than it should have been. Finlay Blackburn was tall, pale-skinned, with dark hair and the kind of composed attentiveness that suggested he was genuinely interested in what people said rather than simply waiting for his turn to speak. He wore a well-fitted charcoal suit with no tie, a light gray shirt open at the collar, capable of formality without being defined by it. "Ms. Gordon, thank you for making time." "Bethany." "Finlay." They shook hands and sat, and he asked about the coffee and nothing else until it arrived, and then he said, "Tell me about Compass House." "Not the business case, the idea." Where did it come from? She had been prepared to discuss structure, financing, operational models. She hadn't been prepared for that question. She told him the truth. Not everything. Not the specific humiliation of coming home from Portland to find a letter on her kitchen counter, but the shape of it. A woman who had needed something like this and discovered it didn't exist. A woman who had the resources to build what was missing. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. The organizations I've worked with in this space, and there are very few doing it well, struggle most with the integration problem. Legal, therapeutic, financial, and employment support all exist in isolation. Women have to navigate 4 different providers in 4 different buildings while managing the most destabilizing period of their lives. What you're describing is what this space has always needed. That's exactly the problem I'm trying to solve. How are you structuring the governance? Independent board or foundation arm of Meridian Group. Entirely independent. Separate legal entity, separate endowment. Board of trustees drawn from relevant professional sectors. I want zero confusion between my commercial enterprise and the charitable work. He nodded. Smart. The last thing you want is a conflict of interest narrative in the press when the foundation starts gaining profile. They talked for 2 hours. Not about investment. He didn't raise it once, and she was quietly grateful, but about program design, about the Edinburgh Foundation he supported, about what worked and what hadn't. He asked thoughtful questions. He offered observations without lecturing. When she pushed back on something he said about governance models, he engaged with her argument rather than deflecting it. By the time she looked at her watch, it was 12:30 and the coffee cups had been empty for an hour. I have a 2 o'clock, she said. I've kept you too long. No. She said it before she'd fully thought it through. This has been genuinely useful. Thank you. I'd like to continue it. He said it simply, directly. There's a lot more to discuss. And I'll be honest, I find you interesting beyond the professional context. I'd like to have dinner. Not to pitch you anything. Just dinner. She met his gaze. Direct, composed, and entirely without performance. I'm going through a divorce, she said. The papers aren't final yet. And I've spent the last 3 months discovering that someone I trusted for 12 years was someone I never really knew. I'm not in a position to trust quickly right now. I understand that completely. No disappointment in his voice. Just acknowledgement. I'm not asking for anything fast. I'm asking for dinner. One evening. You can decide after that whether you want another one. She looked at him for a moment. Thursday, she said. 7 o'clock. He smiled, and it reached his eyes. Walking back to her car, she was aware of the exact quality of the autumn light, the cold in the air, and a feeling in her chest she had almost forgotten was possible. She didn't name it. Not yet. But she didn't push it away, either. Chapter 9. The sentencing hearing for Rowan Calloway was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in March. Bethany did not attend. She was in Compass House instead. The building had been completed on time and on budget. A small miracle she attributed to having hired contractors who respected deadlines and a project manager, a brisk woman named Loretta, who treated disorganization as a personal insult. The space had been transformed from its former gray functionality into something warm and purposeful. Pale walls, natural wood, good lighting, artwork sourced from local artists. Every detail chosen to communicate safety rather than institution. The doors opened officially at 9 in the morning. By noon, the intake coordinator had seen 4 women. Bethany moved between rooms all morning, checking in with the solicitors, sitting briefly in the counseling suite waiting area, reviewing the financial literacy workshop being set up in the training room. By midday, she was simultaneously running a mental checklist of Compass House operational priorities and half-tracking the news on her phone, waiting for Sylvia's call. It came at 11:40. 7 years. No early parole recommendation. Bethany stood in the Compass House kitchen, coffee in hand, and waited for something to happen inside her. Nothing dramatic did. The judge cited systematic breach of client trust and absence of genuine remorse, Sylvia said. He attempted a statement about making mistakes and being sorry. The judge declined to hear it. "Thank you for calling. Are you all right?" "I think so. I feel nothing dramatic. Just a quiet sense that the right thing happened." That's probably the healthiest possible response. A pause. "What are you doing right now?" "I'm standing in the kitchen of a building full of women who needed exactly the kind of help I've created. Rowan's sentencing feels very far away from here." "Good," Sylvia said, and there was something warm in her voice. "That's exactly where it should be." That evening, Bethany had dinner with Finlay. They had been meeting weekly for a month now. Dinner, occasionally a walk, once an afternoon visiting the Stonefield Foundation's Edinburgh office together, which had been genuinely illuminating from a programmatic standpoint. He had become the kind of person she found herself wanting to talk to at the end of difficult days. She was aware of this and was taking it slowly. She told him about the sentencing. "How do you feel?" "Like a chapter one didn't write has finally ended." She turned her wine glass. "I spent about 6 minutes thinking about it this morning. Then I was back at Compass House and I realized, he's just not relevant anymore. What I'm building is relevant. What you're building is relevant." Rowan Calloway is a man who made terrible choices and is now living with them. That sounds like freedom. It is. She met his eyes. It's actually exactly what it feels like. He looked at her for a long moment. "I need to tell you something." She waited. "I was engaged once. For years ago. She left 12 days before the wedding. Told me she'd realized she loved the life I could offer rather than me specifically." He said it without drama, but she heard the old weight in it. "It took me a long time to trust my own judgment again, to believe I could read someone correctly. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me something important. I now know the difference between someone who sees you and someone who sees what you provide." He paused. "When I met you, I saw someone who had built remarkable things despite being told her work was insignificant. Someone who chose honesty over the comfort of pretending. That kind of person is rare." Bethany was quiet. "I'm taking this slowly," she said. "I hope you understand that." "I understand it completely." He reached across the table and touched her hand. Lightly, briefly, with no pressure. "I'm not going anywhere. I just wanted you to know how I see you." She walked home that night in the cold air and felt something she had not felt in over a decade. The specific, fragile possibility of being genuinely loved by someone who actually knew her. She held it carefully, like a thing that could still break. But she held it. Chapter 10. The conference was in Chicago in late February, and the morning of her keynote, Bethany stood backstage in the green room and tried to remember how to breathe. She was wearing a midnight blue sheath dress with structured shoulders and low heels, professional and composed and entirely at odds with the state of her nerves. Her speech notes were on her phone, which she had read 17 times on the flight over and 3 more times in the hotel room this morning. The conference organizer appeared in the doorway. 5 minutes. Bethany closed her eyes. She thought about the kitchen counter, the cream-colored envelope, the clean, deliberate handwriting, the 12 years that had been dismissed in a single page. And then she thought about the 56 women currently being supported by Compass House, the 3 additional solicitors she had hired last month, the counseling wait list she needed to address, the financial literacy workshops that had produced, so far, 11 women who had successfully opened their own business bank accounts for the first time. She thought about Delia, who had driven her to the airport this morning and hugged her and said, "Go burn it down." She walked onto the stage. The ballroom held approximately 800 people. The lights were bright enough that she couldn't see much beyond the front rows, but she could feel the room, its density and attention. She took a breath and began. 7 months ago, I came home from a business trip and found a letter from my husband on the kitchen counter. It told me to collect my belongings and leave before he returned with his new partner. It told me that everything we had built together was now his. It told me our marriage was over and there was nothing left to discuss. The room was completely silent. That letter was the worst thing and the best thing that had ever happened to me. She paused, letting the paradox breathe. Worst, Because it revealed that I had spent 12 years in a marriage to someone who had never genuinely seen me, who dismissed my work as a hobby, who used my desire to trust him as a mechanism for deception, who believed I would simply disappear when he decided it was convenient. Best, because it freed me. She told the story. The house that had always been hers. The company her husband hadn't known existed. The divorce attorney she had retained 7 months before the letter arrived, driven by a hope she had already stopped believing in. The morning after, when she had sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open and realized that her life, the real one, the one she had built, was entirely intact. She didn't name Rowan or Serena. She didn't need to. "Here's what I want you to take from this," she said toward the end, her voice steady and clear. "Adversity is not an obstacle to building. It is the condition in which the most significant building happens. When everything that was false has been stripped away, you discover what was always real. And what was always real? Your talent, your work, your capacity for love and purpose. That is yours. Nobody can take it. Not a letter. Not a marriage ending. Not a man who never understood what he had." She paused. "If you are facing something like this right now, in business, in your personal life, in a situation where someone has decided you are finished, I need you to hear something. You are not finished. You are in the difficult middle of a story that ends with you rising higher than you can currently imagine." The applause started before she reached the final sentence. By the time she finished, the room was standing. She stood there in the bright lights with tears on her face that she didn't try to hide, and she felt, completely, unmistakably, that she was no longer the woman who had read that letter. She was someone entirely new. After the speech, Finlay appeared at the edge of the crowd. He had flown in that morning, said nothing about it until after she came off stage, and now he stood there in a dark gray suit with an expression she could only describe as proud. "You were extraordinary," he said. "I was terrified. You looked like you owned the room." "That's what courage is," she said, remembering something Dr. Walsh had told her. Being terrified and showing up anyway. He smiled and took her hand, and she let him, and it felt exactly right. Chapter 11. The letter arrived in April, forwarded through Sylvia's office. Finlay was at her house when it came. They had recently moved from weekly dinners to something less formally structured, evenings that began as dinner and extended into long conversations on the sofa, occasional nights when neither of them suggested going home and neither needed to. He was in the kitchen making coffee when she opened the envelope. The handwriting was Rowan's. "Bethany, I've seen the magazine article about your foundation. You appear to be doing well for yourself. Good for you. I want you to know something, though. As someone who knew you when you were nothing, I shaped you. Before we married, you were directionless, unfocused. I pushed you to be more. Everything you've achieved, you built it because of the standard I set. So while you're accepting awards and giving speeches, I'd like some acknowledgement of the role I played. Also, I need funds for my prison commissary account. Vanessa's contacts have dried up, and the situation here is difficult. £500 would help enormously. I know you still care about me on some level. Rowan." Bethany read it 3 times. Each reading revealed new layers of delusion, genuine, apparently sincere delusion. He believed he had made her. He believed she owed him gratitude. He believed she would send him money. She carried it to the kitchen and showed it to Finlay without speaking. He read it. His jaw tightened. "He genuinely thinks he built you. He does. He has no concept that you succeeded in spite of him." He looked up. "How do you feel?" "Like I need to write a response that I will absolutely not send." She sat at the kitchen table and wrote it by hand, which felt more appropriate somehow. "Rowan, thank you for reminding me exactly why I'm grateful this marriage ended. You didn't build me. You repeatedly told me that what I was building didn't matter. You dismissed my work for 12 years and called it kindness. I built Meridian Group in private because your pattern was to diminish everything I created whenever I made the mistake of sharing it with you. I built Compass House because I came home to your letter and realized that the support I needed had never existed, so I created it. Everything I have, I built from talent and determination that you never once acknowledged, because acknowledging it would have required you to see me as someone equal to you, and you weren't capable of that. As for money, you are in prison for stealing from the people you were paid to protect. I don't fund thieves. Find someone else. Bethany. She folded it, carried it to the fireplace, and burned it. She watched the paper curl and blacken and become ash. Finlay stood in the doorway, coffee in hand, watching. Better. Much. She turned from the fireplace. I don't feel angry about it. I feel finished. Like that letter was the final proof that there's nothing there to mourn. He was never who I believed he was. Then you're not losing the man you loved. You're releasing a fiction. She looked at him. How are you this perceptive at 8 in the evening? It's one of my few genuine qualities. She laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of her, and crossed the room and let him put his arms around her, and stood there for a long moment feeling the specific comfort of being held by someone who was exactly who he appeared to be. I'm ready, she said quietly. For what? For this. For whatever this is becoming. She pulled back slightly to look at him. I don't want to keep holding this at arm's length. I trust you. That surprises me, but it's true. Finlay looked at her with an expression she had come to recognize as his most genuine one. Not the professional composure, not the easy confidence, but something quieter and more carefully held. I love you, he said. I've been somewhat obviously in love with you since the coffee meeting in October, if we're being accurate about it. She felt the words land in her chest with a weight that was nothing like the old heaviness. This was the good kind. I love you too, she said, and meant it completely. Chapter 12. By the summer, Bethany's life had become something she would not have been able to imagine 18 months earlier, standing in a kitchen reading a letter on cream-colored paper. Compass House had helped 237 women. The waiting list confirmed that the need was far greater than the current capacity. She had begun planning a second location, a slightly different model, designed for women in earlier stages of the crisis rather than the immediate aftermath. The board had approved a budget expansion. 3 additional solicitors had joined the pro bono roster. A major charity foundation had made an approach about a significant grant. Meridian Group had secured its largest contract to date, a 7-year infrastructure partnership with a federal agency worth £115 million equivalent. Bethany's net worth had crossed the 100 million mark. She had celebrated by taking her entire team out to dinner and giving everyone a bonus, then donated $3 million to Compass House's endowment. The article in the business supplement, The Architecture of Recovery, How Bethany Gordon Built 2 Companies and a Movement from the Wreckage of Betrayal, had run in November and gone internationally viral within 48 hours. The Compass House website had crashed from traffic. Donation requests flooded in. Every television program and podcast with a substantial female audience had reached out requesting an interview. She accepted a handful. She was selective. She was building momentum, not a media personality. She had moved Finlay informally in January. Or rather, they had agreed together that the rotation between his flat and her house was producing nothing except 2 poorly stocked refrigerators, and that they should consolidate. He had suggested. She had agreed before he finished the sentence. He adapted to her space with a consideration she had not expected but perhaps should have, asking before moving things, contributing to the aesthetic rather than replacing it, maintaining separate workspaces while sharing everything else. He was, she had discovered, the kind of person who was fundamentally easy to live with because he was fundamentally comfortable with himself. In June, he took her to dinner at a restaurant overlooking the city, the kind of place where the light at that hour does something specific to the skyline, turns it into a painting of itself. Over dessert, he reached across the table and held both of her hands. Bethany Gordon, he said, you took the most destructive thing that had happened to you and built something from it that has genuinely changed the lives of hundreds of people. You run a company that employs 212 people and serves clients across 5 continents. You gave me the extraordinary gift of your trust when trust was something you had very good reasons to withhold. I want to spend the rest of my life building things with you. Not beside you, with you. Equal partners." He paused. "Will you marry me?" He produced a ring. Platinum, single stone, elegant and precise and entirely without ostentation. Exactly what she would have chosen for herself. She felt tears forming and didn't try to stop them. "Yes," she said. "Absolutely yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and leaned across the table and kissed her while the restaurant did something quiet and beautiful that she would only half remember. Applause, she thought. Or perhaps just a feeling that everything in the room had briefly become something better. She was getting married again. Not to someone who needed her to be smaller. Not to someone whose sense of self required her to diminish. To someone who saw everything she was and wanted more of it. That evening, she called Delia. He proposed. A shriek so loud she had to hold the phone away from her ear. I said yes. Another shriek. Delia. Breathing. I am breathing. I'm breathing excited breaths. A pause. Was I right? I told you from the first time you described that coffee meeting. Was I right? You were insufferably right. I'm going to be impossible about this for at least 6 months. I know. She was smiling when she hung up. Still smiling when she and Finlay walked home through the summer evening. Still smiling when she fell asleep that night in their house, his arm warm around her, the ring on her finger catching the low light. Somewhere across the city, Rowan Calloway was serving his sentence. Somewhere else, Serena Voss was navigating her own aftermath. Bethany Gordon was building a life. The kind she had always deserved. Chapter 13. The wedding took place on a Saturday in October, at a vineyard estate an hour outside the city, on a hillside where the vines had turned golden and the light did everything late afternoon autumn light does when it decides to be generous. 58 guests. Delia as maid of honor, already crying before the ceremony began. The Compass House executive director, Elena, who had become a genuine friend over 18 months of building something meaningful together. Key members of the Meridian Group team. Finlay's sister and 2 closest friends from Edinburgh. A handful of venture partners who had become genuine allies. Bethany wore ivory, a simple structured dress with clean lines, no train, no veil. She had never wanted to be performing a costume. She wanted to look like herself, only more deliberately so. The ceremony was brief and personal. No readings from cards. Only what they meant. I came into this believing that love was something I had to earn, Bethany said, her voice steady. I believed that if I was patient enough, quiet enough, useful enough, eventually I would deserve to be fully seen. What I've learned, what you've shown me, is that real love doesn't require you to earn it. It recognizes you. You recognized me from a coffee meeting where we talked about nonprofit governance models, and you were still recognizing me 6 months later, and you will still be recognizing me in 30 years. I promise to give you the same. To see you completely. To choose you every morning. Finlay's voice, when he spoke, was thick with feeling. You are the bravest person I know. Not because you rebuilt after devastation, though you did, and the scale of it is remarkable, but because you chose to trust again. That choice cost you something, and you made it anyway. I will never take it for granted. I promise to be worthy of it. Every day, they exchanged rings. Simple platinum bands. Inside each one, engraved. She needed a hero, so she became one. The reception was everything a celebration should be. Real food, good wine, people who genuinely love them. No performance. Just joy. During dinner, her phone lit up briefly. An unknown number. A text. Congratulations on your wedding. I saw the announcement. I'm glad you found someone who deserves you. Maybe one day you'll be able to forgive me. Rowan. She showed it to Finlay, who read it and shook his head. Still doesn't understand. No. She put the phone face down on the table. And that's not my problem anymore. She blocked the number and returned her attention to the room full of people she loved. At the end of the evening, she gave a brief, unplanned speech. She looked around at the faces she had gathered, people who had seen her at her worst and stayed, or met her in the middle of her rebuilding and recognized something worth investing in. 2 years ago, she said, I came home from a work trip to find a letter from my husband telling me to be gone before he returned. That letter broke something in me, and it freed something in me in the same moment. I've spent the last 2 years figuring out which was more important. She paused. It was the freedom. It was always the freedom. She raised her glass. If you're going through something painful right now, if someone has told you that you are finished, that you have nothing, that you are not enough, I want you to hear this. You are in the middle of your story, not the end, the middle. And the middle is where the work happens. The middle is where you find out who you actually are. She looked at Finlay. And sometimes, in the middle, you find someone who helps you build the rest. The room lifted their glasses. 3 months later, Bethany sat alone at her desk on a quiet Sunday afternoon and wrote a letter. Not to send, just to document. To the woman standing in the kitchen reading that note. I know what you're feeling right now. I know the specific quality of that particular grief. The way it's mixed with something you don't have a word for yet, which is relief, although you won't know that until later. I need you to know something. You're going to be all right. Not fine. Not coping. All right. Genuinely, structurally, deeply all right. You're going to build a company that employs over 200 people. You're going to build a foundation that has helped hundreds of women find their way back to themselves. You're going to fall in love with someone who sees you the way you always deserve to be seen. You're going to stand on stages and tell your story and watch it change people's lives. Rowan did not end you. He accidentally freed you. Cry today. Feel all of it. Then get up tomorrow and start building. Because you have always been enough. You just never had the eyes to see it. With love and absolute certainty, your future self. She sealed it in an envelope and put it in the bottom drawer of her desk. Compass House was expanding to its 5th location. Meridian Group had just turned away an acquisition offer of $320 million and accepted instead a strategic partnership that kept her in control while giving the company global infrastructure. Phoenix House had been renamed when the licensing conflict appeared. It was Compass House now, and it was hers. Finlay appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of tea, his reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. Working. Writing. She looked up. Are you happy? He looked at her with that specific expression, the one that was nothing like performed contentment, but like actual, quiet, architectural happiness. Remarkably so. Good. She accepted the tea. Me too. Outside the window, the city moved through its Sunday rhythms, indifferent to the extraordinary, ordinary miracle happening in this house. 2 people who had each been broken by someone else's choices, choosing each other carefully and intentionally and completely. Rowan had tried to write her ending. Instead, he had handed her a blank page. And she had written something magnificent. Hello, lovers and billionaires. We have come to the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, take a few seconds to like the video and drop a comment, and if you're not a part of the family yet, please subscribe and turn on notifications. This is our own little corner of the internet, so be sure to visit every day because I upload exciting, emotional, and unforgettable stories every single day, and you don't want to miss what's coming next.